All right, so welcome everybody. Glad you could spend the next hour with us. We're going to be doing a little deal analysis here. Jim asked me to come on and do a little bit more. We did this on Saturday afternoon at the one-day workshop and analyzed a couple of deals, and he liked it a lot and thought you'd get some more good information out of it. So he sent me a couple of deals to take a look at. So I'm going to go ahead and show you some screens here and share some data with you. So hold on a quick second. So this is one of the properties that Jim sent to me. And I'm going to go through it. I have not analyzed it myself at all. And the reason I did that is because I wanted you all to see how I do it from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 and see what's going on with it. So if this particular one here, if you notice here, it says it's a multifamily income producing property at 1777 Alibaba Avenue. The one question I did have, though, is one place on here. Here it says that it has 6 units, but this is something that's going to need to be looked into because down here it says property type is a fourplex.
Well, it's an Opa-locka, so welcome to South Florida. That's how it goes. They put it in the 1 to 4 listings, and now they're telling us that it is a 6 unit. So
Got it.
That's kind of how we roll down here.
Okay. So we're going to start off with this. It looks like these are actual numbers that we'll get to in a second. So here's my software. Let me show you this.
Everybody note, this property is active, so I hope you're taking notes.
So this is the software that I went through on Saturday, and I'm assuming this is actual numbers. So if you notice here, there are 6 columns. There's a pro forma column, an actual column, and then 4 what if columns where we can go in and make some potential adjustments. We'll talk about that later. Then there's the top section of the software, sections 1 through 9, where we put in the information we get from the seller. Then there's the middle section, sections 10 and 11, which have to do with financing. There's primary financing and secondary financing. Generally, primary financing comes from a bank and secondary financing comes from the seller. And then the bottom third down here is where all the numbers come together, and it basically tells us, should we move forward with this deal or not move forward with this deal? Or do we have more questions in order to make a decision? So let's start with the actual column, and this is a 6-plex. They're asking $999,000. And then I want to look at their gross potential rental income. So the gross potential rental income, which is right, there you go, which is right here on the form, that assumes that every single unit is occupied all year long and everybody's paying rent on time every single month for 12 straight months, i.e. all year long. So if we scroll down the screen here, it actually does have some rental information. And right here under units, it shows that there are, as you see over here, number of units 3. So there's 3 1-bedroom, 1-bathrooms. They're getting $1,350 a month. There's 2 1-bedroom, 1-bathrooms getting $1,300 a month. And there's 1 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom getting $1,675 a month. So we can do one of 2 things. I can either, or you can pull up a calculator and you can actually add all 6 of these up. That's one way to do it. Or you can turn this into a formula, which is what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to say, because this software is built on an Excel platform. So I'm going to say this equals, and then I'm going to put in 2 beginning parenthesis signs. And again, if this seems too complicated, don't make it complicated. Just go back and to the sheet and take 1,350 times 3, then 1,300 times 2, and 16, and then add all that together to 1,675, then multiply that by 12. You can do that as well. But with me, it's easier for me because I've done this a lot. I do 1,350 times 3. I put in an end parenthesis plus beginning parenthesis, and then I do 1,300 times 2, because there's 3 units at 1,350, 2 units at 1,300. I do the end parenthesis plus, and then the 1,675, because there's only 1 unit at 1,675, and then I do the end parentheses. So the reason I have these parentheses in here is because I wanted to multiply and add all of this together first, and then I'm going to multiply that by 12. So according to this, their income, if every unit is occupied and everybody's paying rent on time every single month, Comes out to exactly 1% of the asking price, which is amazing, at 99,900, 99,900. Then we want to look at the vacancy loss. So if we come back on here, it actually says that it's 100% occupied. So here's what I'm going to do. Under pro forma and actual, I start by putting in whatever they give me. So that means up here, I'm going to put in 0 to start with, but that's not correct. One of the things that I teach is that an absolute minimum, this should be at least 5%. But because they told me under actual numbers it was 100% occupied, I'm going to start at 0 vacancy, which is 100% occupancy. Then, and again, with the software, I just start at the top and work my way down. So then I look at other income. Is there any other income listed? Well, it talks on here about the residents are paying their own water, their own electricity. So there's no income from that. There could be income from late fees. There could be income from pet fees and things like that, but it doesn't actually show any of that stuff on here. It doesn't show any other income coming in that I've been able to see on this property. It does show the tax amount, which is great. It shows the annual NOI, which we'll get into in just a little bit. It shows water, sewer. It shows who's listing it. And pretty much that's about it. Okay. Interesting. The previous list price was $1,090,000. The original list price was 1.9 million, 1.19, so 1.2 million. So they've already dropped the price about $200,000 from what I'm looking at here, starting way back on March 6th. So they are motivated to sell it. Obviously, they probably had it priced a little too high. Here's some photos of the property. So it looks like they fixed it up. Looks like they put in vinyl plank flooring. Looks like a nice stainless steel refrigerator. Maybe they put in new cabinets or just painted them. And again, I don't see any other income anywhere on the sheet here. So Jim, if you see it, you're welcome to chime in and let me know.
No, I didn't see it, and they have reduced it. The other reason I would opine they haven't had a lot of lookers is they're only paying 2% commission. That's not very motivating to us brokers.
Well, but it's not very motivating, but it actually is fairly typical for a commercial property, but usually the commercial properties are a lot bigger as far as the dollar value. So, okay. So again, I don't see any other income, so I'm going to leave that as 0. Then it says total operating expenses. So there's two things that I'm looking at here. One is it actually shows total operating expenses down here a little bit further. Let me go back to that screen right here. It says annual total expenses is 17,964, but it also shows the tax amount, the property tax amount at 11,890. So Jim, since this is one of your listings from Florida, is it common for do you think this 17,000 includes the property taxes, or do you think this is other expenses?
I would assume it's only property taxes and insurance. And if you notice, everything has its own meters, but it's woefully inadequate. It's just not real. Now sometimes the water bills include trash. There may be no common trash, but it does include it has
but insurance at around 6,000, that's kind of low.
it is kind of low for insurance. So
Yeah,
I would be suspect of the expenses.
Yeah, here it is right here. It actually shows under expenses include the real estate tax. There's nothing for water and sewer. It shows insurance, yes. Trash, yes. Lawn maintenance, yes. So it's not showing anything for maintenance and repairs. It's not showing anything for replacement reserves, not showing anything for water and sewer or electricity. So a couple things you have to be careful of is in most properties, number one, there usually is a common area meter for common area lights and things like that. Also, when the units go vacant, typically you want to have the electricity from the vacant units switch over from the previous resident to your name or your LLC's name, so that you can keep the electricity on in order to keep it nice and cool in the summertime, in order to show people the units, make sure they're nice and cool so people can walk into a nice, cool environment and go, right? They're home because it's nice and comfortable inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with, again, I'm going to just put in the information they give me under my expense field. So the expenses they give me is $17,964. So if you notice right here under the expense field, I can put this in. By the way, this is what's called an OR box. I can put this in as a dollar amount or as a percentage. So do one or the other, but not both. So I'm going to put it in, since they gave me a dollar amount, I'm going to put it in as a dollar amount. And then if you notice right below it, it's showing the expenses are coming in at under 18%. Now that's way too low. And the reason I know it's low is because even if they've upgraded the units and done a lot of work on them, because this looks like they've actually done some pretty good stuff on the inside, maybe it is low maintenance. Maybe they just rehabbed all the units. But the bottom line is you are going to have to do repairs and maintenance on this property. It's going to happen. So the question is, you may not have to pay it now, but you are going to have to pay it at some point in the future. So as a matter of fact, one of the reports I forgot to bring up, hang on a quick second here. I'm going to open up a report, and this property, is it located closer to Fort Lauderdale or to Miami, Jim?
To Miami.
Okay. So one of the reports I have here, and you can buy these reports from a website called IREM.org. IREM.org. And this is what the report looks like. It's called in this case, the last one I got from them was back in 2019. You can buy a more updated one. They used to be paper ones like this, but now they're just doing everything online. So that's why I'm pulling up the paper one so you can see it. And I can go down here and I can find Miami, and I can click on it, and it'll take me right to page 98, and it'll show me Miami. Well, this is probably not an elevator building since it looks like it's one floor. And then the only other buildings that it shows in Miami are right here, what are called garden type. So it's probably technically not a garden type either, but we can still use some of these numbers. And so I'm going to scroll down to this column for Miami and look at total all expenses. And it's coming in around 31.2% and about $6,500 per unit per year. Now, keep in mind, though, that is a median amount. The 6488 is a median amount. So some properties are going to be higher than that. Some are going to be lower. So if I come back to my spreadsheet, obviously we're nowhere close to either of those numbers, and we'll fix that in just a little bit. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to go in here to my financing. Well, I know I'm not getting 80% financing in today's market. I might only get 70 to 75% financing, especially since, if you notice here, we'd be borrowing less than $1 million. Matter of fact, we're borrowing less than $750,000 at the current asking price. So I think that based on those numbers, I'm probably going to get an interest rate around 6.5% today with a 25-year AM. So now that I have my financing in, I can go down to the bottom, and keep in mind, we're going to have to fix some things here because we're obviously not going to get $55,000 in cash flow. We'll talk about DCR in a little bit when we get more realistic numbers, and we're not going to be making a 24% cash on cash return because we have some things that we need to fix. But at least this is a good start. This is where I start. I just put in the information that I get from the seller, and then I go in and I make some adjustments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this over to the next column. And then before I do that, I want to show you some other websites that I utilize so that we can take a look at this particular property. So one of the first things I do is I'm going to go down here to my Google Maps, because before I get too far into this, I want to take a look at it and see if I even want to spend any more time on it. So here's where it's located. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. You see the little red dot there, right here in the middle of the screen. That's where the property is located. I'm going to zoom out just to kind of get an idea. So it's further inland, but it's very close to, looks like a highway right here. North of Hialeah, just to the east of the Miami Opa-locka Executive Airport. So it gives me kind of an idea of where it's located. I can also go down here and I'm going to click in the lower left-hand corner because I want to look at the satellite view and see what the area looks like. What kind of businesses are in the area? There's the airport over here. So it shows everything up a little bit more clearly because I want to know if I'm in a residential area, an industrial area. Am I next to railroad tracks? Am I next to a major freeway? And as you can see here, it is next to a major highway, Highway 9, but it's got a little bit of a buffer. There is one extra row of houses in here that's kind of in the way. I can then also click on the street. And what will happen is if Google Maps has driven down the street, it popped up right here with the little window and a picture. So if I click on it where it says street view, it'll take me right down to the street view. And we can look at the property, and there's the property right there. So it looks like, and the other thing I want to look at too, I need to move my control panel out of the way. Hang on a second. It's blocking the view here. Down here in the lower right-hand corner, if you notice, it says these pictures were last taken 3 years ago, actually 4 years ago, in March of 2019. Hopefully you can see that where my mouse is pointing down here at the very bottom. So the pictures, if we go back to the building on their listing, actually looks like they've painted the exterior there. They painted it a light blue with a white trim. And then it looks like they gave it a little bit of green colorization or something up here. So they did change it a little bit from what it is showing right here. So, and it should just be, I'm assuming it's just this property. The other thing I want to do when I'm looking at this is I want to look around the street and see what else is in the area. What else does it look like? So I want to look at the types of cars. I want to look at the quality of the buildings. Do they look like they're maintained? Do they look like they're falling apart? You got a lot of empty lots here. By the way, back here is that Highway 9. You got another empty lot here potentially. I'm going to go up and down the street just a little bit to kind of give you a flavor. So you can see another little place right here. One of the things that I do notice as well, if you notice the bars on all the windows, that's not necessarily a good sign.
Well, you have to remember that's a decoration feature in Miami. Okay.
I understand. But it is something that you look at and you notice, right? You see all the bars on the windows. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a deal breaker just yet, but just notice those things. Again, look at the cars. Notice this car here that's all smashed up. Okay, so do people have enough money in this area to pay the rent? You got a little dead end street here. So we're not going to go much further, but I'm going to turn around here. It looks like a very small church here. Another lot that's not well maintained, at least as of March of 2019. Actually, this goes back to May of 2013. So if you notice here that the date on the web page changed as we came up the street a little bit. So let's go back up and see when it comes back. And just going that one little click, it's now back to March of 2019. So there's the lot again. Now it has been maintained. They've been cutting it back. I'm going to go up this way just a little bit further past the property the opposite direction and see what's out here. It looks like another business here. We can zoom in on it. Little Rock Primitive Baptist Church. So another church in the area. So I'm wondering if these were houses at one point that people have now turned into churches in more of a commercial area. All right, here's another little nice property here on the corner. It looks like it's well maintained, even though it's got the bars in the window. Looks like it's got a little lighting here on the front door path. So you get the idea, right? You can drive the area using Google Maps. I'm going to go up the street here. You can see this one up here at the end. It looks like these trees are all overgrown, but sometimes people like that kind of stuff. Sometimes it actually ruins the building, especially if the branches and everything are rubbing up against the tree. Rubbing up against the house, and then you end up with other issues. So coming around the side corner. Again, this is December of 2020, so a little bit newer. There's another property. So you get the idea, right? You can drive around and you can see what's going on in the neighborhood. This is a beautiful site here. Clothes hanging out. I get it. There are some people that like doing that, but usually in really good, nice areas, you don't have people hanging their clothes outside. They're usually taking them to the laundromat or they have laundry in their unit. All right. A couple other websites I want to go check out. The next one here is called City Data. So with City Data, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with Miami. And actually, I want to go back to my map too, because I'm going to zoom out on here and I'm going to show you how I use my map. All right, because here's the property. Let me click on it again. There's our red dot. And come on up. There we go. I'm going to show you why I'm doing this here in just a second. So back to city data. I want to go down here and I want to look at what's going on with the crime in Miami. So if I come down here to the bottom, if you notice, it actually shows the crime from 2006 to 2019. I'm not sure if they're going to be updating this again or not. Hopefully they do, but it looks like it's been a while since they've updated it. But I look down here at the bottom, and what I want to see is I want to see the crime dropping. And if you notice, it is dropping and it's also below 500. So I want to see it below 500 and actually, slowly going down or rapidly going down over the years. So as far as crime is concerned, that's not bad at all. Now that I have the crime for the entire city of Miami, I also want to go up. And if you notice here, there's the actual area of Miami. I want to put in the zip code for the property. So I need to go back to my map because I need to get the zip code. I don't have that. And the zip code is 33054. And I'm going to put in the zip code because now I just want to see the zip code. Okay. Now I'm going to scroll down to the map. And the reason I did the crime first is because usually on smaller towns, there won't be a crime graph like I just showed you. And sure enough, there's no crime down here. So I'm going to go back up to the map. There's the property, or there's the zip code outlined in red. I'm going to zoom in on it. And I believe the property is right around this general area right in here. And the reason I go back to that other map, the Google map, is because if you notice on here, it's very difficult to see the street names and anything else that goes along with it to identify exactly where the property is located. So I'm going to go back to the map and kind of go back and forth between the two. And if you notice here, there is a street that comes along fairly parallel, or not parallel, but horizontal. And then you've got this other road right here that meets up with it right around Highway 9. So if we come back over here, that's probably this area right here, this road right here. And then you can see the other road angling up. So here's the road angling up. This is the freeway or Highway 9. And then right here is where everything kind of comes together, is right in this particular area. So our property, if we come back over here, it's in this little triangle, which is pretty much right around this general area. So here's what I want to do. If you notice now, these little squares are changing, the highlights is changing, and they also have different shading to them. These are called census blocks. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it, and you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner. Now, if your control panel is in the way in the upper right-hand corner, you might want to move it, but I'm going to click on this. And what happens is right here, it comes up with a census block. And I'm going to use the drop-down arrow to pull up that information. The other thing I look at here too is, if you notice, it says under median household income is only $27,000 in that census block, which is way too low. My minimum that I'm looking for is $45,000 a year. I also look at the median contract rent, and according to this, it's $685, which is also too low. The unemployment rate is just under 9%. And what I'd like to see is I'd like to see the unemployment no more than 3 points higher than the city, but worst case scenario, no more than, worst case scenario, no more than 3 points higher than the city for unemployment. But best case scenario, I'd like to see the unemployment in that census block below the city average. The other thing that I'm looking at is the fact that there are, I'm trying to highlight that and it's moving the block. There are 27% of the people that live in this area that are below the poverty line. Okay, my number is 15%. I want to see that at 15% or less. So that's just one census block, assuming that this is where the property is located. If it's up here, now I'm going to click on it, on this census block, because I want to get an idea. I want to go kind of around the whole area to see what I'm dealing with. Now that I go up to this other block, now our median household income jumped to 54,000. That's excellent. Median rent is 1,400. That's excellent. Unemployment is still at 9%. We haven't looked at unemployment yet, but we'll do that in just a minute. But the poverty level jumped to 41%. So maybe not the most stellar area. Let's look at this one here. This one's at $57,000 for median income, $1,200 for rent, still 9% for unemployment. Poverty level is still at 30%. So I'm not feeling all warm and fuzzy about this particular area. And I'm not going to go over here to this side because this big highway that's in the way is a major dividing point between this northwest side and the southeast side over here. So a lot of literally, there are some areas, if you've heard of, oh, they cross the tracks. We could cross the tracks and come over here and things could be fantastic. I mean, look at that. You're at 76,909 for rent. Unemployment's actually a little bit higher at 12%. Poverty level is still bad. Sometimes you cross over to one of these main barriers, which is this main highway right here, and you get a completely different read on everything that's going on the other side. So I'm not all that excited about this particular area so far. But again, I'm not going to go over to that side. It doesn't bother. I'm not even going to worry about it. So it's between the bars on the windows and what I'm seeing so far, it's still not necessarily a stellar deal from that perspective, but we've got a couple other things that I want to do here. So one of the ones I want to do is go to a website called bestplaces.net. bestplaces.net. And I'm going to put in the city name. And it's going to come up and it's going to give me some information. It's a pretty small population, which makes sense because it's a suburb of Miami. One of the things I want to look at here too is under economy. What's going on with the economy? Well, they actually have, if you notice here in Opelika, the unemployment is 8.2. So based on what I said earlier, I don't want any census block to be more than 3 points higher than the city. So if the city's at 8.2, that means I can go up to 11.2. So I think pretty much all the areas we looked at were below 11.2 on the northwest side of that highway. So that's okay. Then I'm going to back out and I want to go look at population. I want to see how much the population has grown. And I click on Learn More and it shows. Oops, let me go back real quick before I click on it. And it shows that the population has grown about 8.7%. Even though this says 2020, typically it's grown the 8.7% since 2010. So let's click on the Learn More now for population. And we'll see how much the population has actually gone up. So I'm going to slide down here. It's going to show me the population growth. And it shows the population growth. Let me go back up to a tad. Here we go. So the current population is at 16,310. The population in 2020 was 15,663. And back in 2010, it was 15,239. So I'm going to pop up my calculator. I'm going to take the 16,310, which is this number up here. Then I'm going to take what they show as the population back in 2020. And I'm going to divide the 16,310 by 15,663. Okay. And that shows only a 4% population increase. So 1.04 means that the population has increased 4% since 2020. Now I'm going to do the same calculation with the 16,310. And I'm going to now go look at the 2010 mark, which was 15,239. And divide it by 15,239. And if you notice here, it shows a population growth of about 7%. So it's still not completely matching up with the number on the front page, which is odd. I don't think I've ever seen that before. But it's still a pretty good growth rate at 7%. So 7% is a little bit less than 1% a year. Ideally, I would like to see the population grow about 1% a year. All right. 2 more websites I want to look at, or maybe 3 more websites, and then we're going to get back into the numbers and we'll take some questions too. Let me go find my other website. So here's one of the other websites. And this is just a quick check. This is called Rentometer. And I'm going to put in the address. And most of these are 1 bedroom and they're renting them for about $13.50. So I'm going to put in $13.50. These are 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. At least the majority of them are. I'm not going to go through every single one just because we don't have time to look at the 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom. Normally, I start with about a 6-month look back and a 1 mile radius, and then I press analyze. And when it comes up, if you notice here, it says there weren't enough search results within the 1 mile, so it automatically extended the radius to 2 miles. When that happens, I generally go back to 1.5 miles just to double check it, because the smaller, the tighter the radius, the better numbers I'm going to get for that particular area. So if I lower it to 1.5 miles, sure enough, it works out just fine. And what I'm looking at here is it's showing the average is $1,495 for a 1 bedroom, and the median is $1,500. So we potentially have some upside to this particular property and maybe getting a little bit higher rent than just what they're showing. So the other thing I can do here too, if you notice up here, there's some red dots, there's blue dots, there's green dots. These are all the different subject properties that came up in this 1.5 mile radius. So now if I click on view probe report, and you can get these reports, or it's $199 per year for access to Rentometer. You can also talk to property managers in the area that manage these types of properties, and they can tell you what you should be able to get for rent for these properties as well. So what you can do now, if you want to, you can take a screenshot of this. And if I was in the area and interested in this property, I would drive by every single one of these properties and, at least from an outside perspective, compare my subject property to these properties to see if there's a reason, at least from the outside, why they're getting more or less rent. Does it have to do with how the property is being maintained? Does it have to do with the neighborhood where the property is located? What's the circumstances? So as you can see, there's quite a few different properties here that come up on the list. So that's a good thing. And they're all within 1.5 miles. And we can go by and take a look at them. We can also check the square footage to see how the square footage compares between the two as well. All right. Last couple websites. There's one called, we just did City Data. Well, there's another one very similar to it called City Protect. City Protect will show me for some properties, but not all the properties. It will show me what the crime is in that particular area. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is, as this slowly comes up here, I'm going to sign in. And I don't believe you have to have I don't think you have to pay for this one. Matter of fact, I know you don't have to pay for this one, but not all the information comes up. All right, so the map is building. Then what's going to happen up over here? I'm going to get a little magnifying glass. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to enter the address. It's going to autofill if it matches, which it did, and then it's going to zoom right in on the location. Okay. Usually, it actually, just like the other website, it gives me a little dot that says, here's where the property is located. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. Let me reset this. I'm going to refresh it and put it back in again. And there's one more crime site that we're going to check out as well, too, called Spot Crime. Okay, there we go. Yeah, a little Alibaba the property should be right around here. And it's not showing up as far as giving us a little dot that shows the property, but that's okay. We know the general area where it's located. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to click on filters. The first thing I'm going to do is check the box that says view registered sex offenders. And I'm going to accept their terms. They're basically saying it's not accurate, so don't depend on it. And as you can see, these little things that popped up here, these are registered sex offenders. So there's nothing in this general area where the property is located, so that's good. And these two down here on the other side of the highway. I'm also going to go in here, and for the date range for crimes, I'm going to click on last month. And then I'm going to come down here and click on select all incidents. So you've noticed it's a dash. I want to actually be a check mark, so it does actually look at all incidents. Then I'm going to click on view results. And it should update the map. Now, sometimes the reason I have a couple of different websites that I look at here is because if you notice, there's nothing coming up except the sex offenders. That typically means that the local police department does not interface with City Protect and how they collect their data. So if you notice, there's plenty of sex offenders because that's a national registry and it's not coming up. There's no crimes whatsoever. That does not mean there's no crimes. Those of you living in Miami, you know there's a reason that you have those bars on all those windows. So certain areas can have more crime than other areas, and there's always crime. I don't care how nice the area is, there's always crime. And if you notice, there's nothing popping up here except sex offenders. So that's not good. So that's why I also use Spot Crime. And there's a couple other websites you can use too. Sometimes your local police departments will also have their own database that you can go into. So I'm going to, again, put in the address. There we go. Sometimes it has to have the full address. All right, now here's a totally different story. If you notice here, that's where the property is located. That's where the little dot is. And if we zoom in on it, you'll notice all these little symbols around the area. So there's nothing immediately right around the property. Actually, the property is up over here, which is interesting. It didn't give us the exact property because the property is right up over here on Alibaba, this area right in here. Let me put the address in again. And there it is. Now it moved. Okay. So if you notice what's going on, well, fortunately, again, because of the highway, right? The highway's right here. This gray line that runs perpendicular, or sorry, diagonally through the picture, all the crime is over here. And if you notice, there's one little dot over here. This, by the way, a target is not good. That means there was a shooting. I can click on it. It'll show when it came up. That was April 16th, so about 10 days ago. I can click on more information. It'll come up with another page here, and it says shooting, stabbing, delayed, MGPD investigating, a man shot. The guy was transported to the Aventura Trauma Center, and the suspect fled the scene. Okay, that's not good, but it is quite a ways away from the property. There's a question mark down here, so let's click on it. It says other. For more information, it says disturbance. Okay, that's not a big deal. If you notice up above it, there's a pair of handcuffs. I'm going to click on the handcuffs. Handcuffs say that somebody was arrested. Well, why were they arrested on April 20th? Narcotic buy, sell, possession. So it was narcotics bust. Again, it's not what you like in the area, but as you can see, there's not a whole lot of stuff going on over here. So that's good. All the crime appears to be over in this area. There's another shooting. If you notice here, there's fists. The fists mean that that was an assault. So if we click on it, it was an aggravated assault. So there are simple assaults. There's aggravated assaults. Usually an aggravated assault either means somebody was beat up or they got hit with a weapon of some type, which sometimes could be a fist, sometimes it could be a bat, a crowbar, the butt of a gun, any number of things. If you notice the little blue people here, it says theft. Right? You get the idea, right? You want to check out the area to see whether or not you want to invest in that particular area. Right? This says theft from a motor vehicle. Right? So from that perspective, right, I don't see anything that would keep me from a crime perspective from being interested in buying this particular property. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a couple questions, and then we're going to get back into the numbers in the spreadsheet. I'm going to show you how I go in and adjust the spreadsheet to look at the numbers more realistically. So let's see what the questions are here. All right, Wayne says, Anthony, good to see you again. I don't know if you utilize the Section 8 program for your rentals, but if you do, or for a landlord that does, would that have any effect on your criteria for residents below the poverty line, median household income, etc.? No, it doesn't. For what I was looking at on city-data.com, that was the website I was looking at, that doesn't affect my criteria. I get it that some people are on Section 8. By the way, I don't have anything against Section 8. We have Section 8 housing. We accept vouchers in some of our properties. We also have a 60-unit property in Burlington, Iowa, and 18 of the 60 units are under what's called a HAP contract, a housing assistance provider contract. So no, I don't have any problem with that, but I do still look at the income, the poverty, and everything else that goes on in that area, because it's one thing to have 2 or 3 people in the area that have poverty issues. I get it. But to have the whole neighborhood have an issue with poverty, Generally, what that means is you have people that they don't have enough money to pay the rent, and which means you're always going to be having collection issues. All right. Then Ed says, do you use a site that shows if an area is prone to flooding? I do not as of this point, because right now we're not in any areas that have flooding issues. Now, obviously, if I'm interested in this property down in Miami, yeah, that could be an issue. So I would definitely want to know that. And you're going to get flood maps. One of the things you should be getting as part of your survey on your property, the survey should show if you are in a flood zone, and also your insurance company should show if you're in a flood zone. All right, let's go back to our numbers. So one of the things that I recommend when it comes to vacancy is, again, you want to use either as an absolute minimum 5%, you want to use or the building vacancy or the market vacancy. The market vacancy is the vacancy for that type of property in that market. And by the way, that market doesn't mean all of Miami. It means Opelika, right? Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. So you want to kind of narrow it as much as possible, maybe even to that zip code. And since we don't know what the market vacancy is, and we know the building itself is at 0, that leaves the only alternative for right now at 5%. So I'm going to put in the number 5, press enter, and it's going to give me 5%. I would also, at some point, I would ask the agent or the owners if they have any other income for things like late fees, pet fees, forfeited security deposits. If the residents leave early and break the lease, or if they damage the unit beyond normal wear and tear, are they putting any claims on the security deposit? Right. Then we come down here and look at the expenses. The expenses are, to me, way too low. Pretty much this is, according to their list, it's showing taxes. By the way, let me back up. There's an acronym you need to memorize so that you can quickly go through your what's called your offering memorandum. That's what this sheet is here. Or similarly, it's not a full offering memorandum, because most offering memorandums are anywhere from 10 to 20 to 30 pages, but at least it is an offering memorandum. They're putting information out there. They're letting you know what's available, the price point, how much rent they're getting on the different units and things like that. So the offering memorandum a lot of times will list all of the expenses. Well, it kind of shows the expenses, but it doesn't, because if we come back up here, actually, I guess it's down. Nope, it was up. We're showing expenses used, which is right here, right? All of our expenses included. It's showing, yeah, real estate taxes used, but it doesn't show anything for common water and sewer. It doesn't show anything for electric. Again, your electricity, if it goes off, or if somebody moves out, you want to have that transferred over to your name. It does show insurance. It does show trash, but it has nothing for maintenance and repairs, nothing for supplies, nothing for reserves. So the acronym you need to memorize, you should write this down, is TIMMUR, TIMMUR. TIMMUR stands for taxes, as in property taxes, insurance, management, maintenance, utilities, replacements, and reserves. So looking at these numbers right now, it doesn't even show anything for management, right? Management is 0. So chances are the owner's managing the property themselves, which is fine if you want to manage the property yourself. But for me, this is an investment property. And as an investment property, it needs to pay for itself to have a manager take care of it. So with this small of a property, I'm going to assume that's about 10%. So we already know that taxes and insurance are here. That's the 17. So the 17,964 is for property taxes, insurance. There's no management. There's no maintenance and repairs. There's no utilities. And there is some, there is some maintenance. That's the lawn maintenance. And there's nothing for reserves. So let's start with this number, the 17,964. Which is already up here, and I'm going to put in an equal sign. I'm going to say this equals 17,964. And then I'm going to add, I'm going to say plus, and I'm going to add 10% for the management. So that would be $9,491. $9,491. How did I get that number? Whoops. Hang on. This should say plus. How do I get 9491? That's 10% of $94,000, right? So here's the $94,000. That's the income minus the vacancy. So 10% of the collected rent is, and I just lost my number. Right. So 10% of the collected rent would be 10% of 94,905, which is $9,491. Okay. So that covers taxes, insurance, and management. There's nothing for maintenance and repairs. So even if they just rehab the place, at some point in time, you're going to have to replace the flooring. You're going to have to paint the interior and the exterior. You're going to have to take care of the roof and the air conditioning units and all that stuff. So on average, just to be safe, I'm going to put in another 10% for that. So that's another $94.91. So we've got taxes, insurance, management, maintenance and repairs, utilities. Utilities may not be that big of a deal because it's a smaller property. But if we come back here, right, they're taking care of most of their maintenance, most of their water, their sewer, their electricity. It looks like the residents are taking care of all that, but I'm going to add in a little bit. So I'm just going to say $1,000 a year. The last one is reserves. Okay. So reserves. My absolute minimum for reserves is $300 per unit per year. That's my absolute minimum. Now it could very well and probably will go up from there, but my absolute minimum is $300 per unit. Well, 6 units times 300, that's $1,800. So now I've got the 17,964 includes taxes and insurance and a little bit of maintenance. Then the 94.91 is management. The next 94.91 is maintenance and repairs. Then I've got $1,000 just for the heck of it for utilities. Now, if you can find out that that's lower when you actually get into this and put in an offer and start doing your research, great. If it comes out lower, your numbers below are going to look even better. That's fantastic. But again, I want to be conservative. So that's less than $100 per month for utilities for things like if the water gets changed over to your name or the electricity gets changed over or common area maintenance, the common area utilities. And then the reserves of $1,800, $300 minimum times 6 units. So what does that equal? Well, if you notice, our expenses went up by $32,000. But look at our expense ratio. We're now in line with what I think is a much better number as a percentage. We're just under 42%. That's fantastic. So now going down and looking at our numbers, our mortgage stayed exactly the same. All I want to look at now is the rest of our numbers. And if you notice, we went from having a cash flow of $21,000 a year. Come on. Here we go. We went from having a cash flow. I'm not sure why this is doing the wrong line here. I'm trying to highlight this. There we go. We went from doing a cash flow of $21,000 a year to losing $5,500 a year. That's not good. Our DCR, which is the next line, the DCR stands for debt service coverage ratio. This is a number where lenders want to see you at least 1.25 because they want to know that you have enough cushion left over to pay the mortgage bill, even though you might have some ups and downs with collecting rent and expenses and things like, or extra expenses. So everything 1 and greater, if you have a number of 1 or higher, it means you have enough to cover the debt service. If it's less than 1, like what we have over here, that means you're losing money. You don't even have enough money to cover the debt service. That could be a problem. So what started out and looked like a pretty decent deal because it had a lot of cash flow. That's some really good cash flow for a sixplex. That's over $3,000 per unit per year in cash flow. Our DCR was above 1.25, which is excellent. The cash on cash return is at 7.6%. So all good numbers in today's market. The problem is when we started looking at it with more realistic numbers and looking at it the way a bank is going to underwrite it and add in things like maintenance and repairs and management, it's not worth what they're asking for it. You're actually losing 2%. You'd have to come up with $280,000 to buy this property. And then you'd either make 7.6% under ideal circumstances or lose 2% or $5,500 a year if you bought this property at their asking price of $999,000. Now, before we just say, screw this deal, let's go on to something else, here's the other thing I want to show you about the software. So what this is showing up here is based on the information that we entered. And again, keep in mind, I did a very quick compilation of the expenses. What you should be doing is going out and talking to at least 3 property management companies that manage this type of property in this area and ask them what the expenses should be per unit per year for a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit for taxes, insurance, management, maintenance and repairs, utilities, and reserves. Got it? So this number could be high based on me being conservative with my numbers. So there could be some room for this to be corrected. Okay, number one. Number two, you want to talk to some agents in the area to find out what cap rate this property should be sold at. So if you notice up here, there's basically selling it with no expenses whatsoever because you're going to manage it yourself, which I don't recommend. But you're welcome to do that if you want to at an 8.2% cap rate. Well, I think that's high for the area, and that's probably one of the reasons people will find it and look at it and be salivating over it because they see the 8.2% cap rate. I think 7% or even 6% is realistic in this particular market. So even if we get a little conservative, or sorry, less conservative, it looks like what we should be paying for this property is around $850,000 maximum. So let's do 2 more quick things. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to copy this information over to the next column. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the price to $850,000. And now let's see if the numbers at the bottom work. And this one thing I love about the quick analysis software is very, very quickly, we can come down here and see if the numbers work. And the numbers get better, but they still don't work. You still don't have enough cash flow. My minimum cash flow for a 6-unit property is at least $6,000 a year. And that's just to get started on putting in an offer. The DCR still needs to be above 1.25. It's not above 1.25. So even at that number, it doesn't work. Here's the last thing I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to Rentometer, because if you remember on Rentometer, I must have used something else. So let me go back to Rentometer, because this was important to see. And then we'll take some questions. I'm going to put this in at 1350, right? Because if you recall, with 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, it showed that the median rent and the average is right around $1,500. So what if we were able to take our rent up very, very quickly within the first year to closer to $1,500? So right now they're around $1,350. So let's be conservative and only go up $100 per unit. So I'm going to leave this as the $99.99 or $99,900, but then I'm going to add a formula. And the formula is this: it's 6 units times, I'm going to take each unit up $100 times 12 months. So what I did here by putting this formula and putting it in parentheses, it's going to multiply 6 times $100 per month times 12 months, and it's going to add it to the $99,900. And what do we come up with? Well, now we just jumped about $8,000 in revenue. Well, that looks pretty good. So now how do our numbers look? Again, keeping in mind that our expenses might be a little high. Our loan stays exactly the same. But a year from now, we do have plenty of cash flow, but our DCR still does not work. And then even though some of you might be looking at this and saying, oh, it's only a 4.35% cash on cash return, keep in mind that's just cash on cash. That does not include appreciation, depreciation, or equity buildup. When you add those things all together, especially if you were at my one-day workshop, you would know that you're probably going to be on the long run with your property in the 25, 30, 35% range for your total return on investment. So cash on cash is just one measurement. And in today's economy, you should be thinking about wealth preservation. You are not preserving your wealth, letting it sit in a savings account. You need to put it into something real, like a real tangible asset, like an apartment building, a storage facility, a mobile home park, an office building, even precious metals, something that will preserve your wealth, because you're going to be losing 8 to 9% a year in buying power if you just let it sit in a bank account and a savings account. All right. So this deal does have possibilities. So I don't want to discourage anybody. It just needs a little bit more investigation. The investigation needs to be, for those of you that want to pursue this property, first off, talk to Jim, because he's the one that sent it to me. So maybe he can help you with it. But what you need to do is you need to talk to at least 3 property managers. You need to find out what the expenses should be for taxes, insurance, management, maintenance and repairs, utilities and reserves, based on their experience managing this type of property in that area. You need to find out what the rental rates should be for this type of property in that area, right? Rentometer says it should be close to $1,500, and I only use $1,450 in my What If 2 to be conservative. Sometimes Rentometer is low. I've talked to a lot of managers where the Rentometer might say $1,500, and I find out it should be $1,600, $1,700, $1,800. So that's potentially a good sign. So one of the points I want to make you aware of is, even though we looked at a lot of stuff online, you need to confirm all of this information, like the rental rates, the expenses, the crime, everything that's going on in that market, by talking to real live experts in that particular market. All right. Whew. That was a lot of stuff. I've been talking a long time. Hopefully I didn't put you guys to sleep. All right. Ed says, we already answered that one. An anonymous attendee says, will they send a copy of the video?
With your permission, yes.
Yes, you can get a copy of the video. So one other quick thing too, is I want to let you guys know about this, because I know we're a little bit over, we're right at our hour mark, is one of the reasons Jim wanted to have this presentation is because I'm going to be in Miami doing a 4-day boot camp next week. And the people that have come through Jim, that have also come through some of the other real estate groups in your area, they absolutely love the training, and it's a fantastic training, and it's so good. I actually guarantee it twice. I put my money where my mouth is. You can actually come all 4 days, and at the end of the 4th day, if you tell me it wasn't worth your time or your money, I will give you double your money back. So something to think about, especially since I'm going to be right there in your backyard next week, May 4th through the 7th. There's some people on this webinar that are going to be there next week, and we'd love to have you join us. We're going to have about 40 attendees, which is about my average. I love the size around 40. It's not too small that there's no energy, and it's not too big that people get lost and don't get their questions answered. So we'd love to have you join us. So Jim, anything else you want to bring up? Any questions you have for me? Any questions the audience has for me on what we just went through?
Well, I would remind you to sign up. When's the deadline?
The deadline, since the boot camp is next week, the deadline is noon on this Friday. So you basically have a day and a half to make a decision, and the price gets you the home study course. It gets you a seat at the boot camp. There's also an 8-week coaching program that comes along with the boot camp that you get to participate in. And the whole package for you and a family member or a business partner is a whopping $1,695. So that's less than $850 per person. And you each get the home study course. You each get a seat at the 4-day boot camp. You each get the 8-week follow-up coaching. Oh, and there's one other thing you get. I also send out a webinar version of my 4-day boot camp. So you'll get access to that through a separate email where you can go watch those online, but that also comes with it. So if you added up everything individually, it's almost like a $3,000 package that you're getting for pretty much half price at $1,695 that you can split with a family member or business partner. And that's why I'm willing to guarantee your satisfaction. that you're going to love the boot camp by the end of it. When you're done, most of the time people come up to me at the end of the first day, or usually no later than the end of the second day, and they're like, oh my God, there's so much information. And this is especially from people who have been to other programs that people put on that they talk about apartment and commercial investing, and they come to mine and they're like, I didn't get any of this information or any of this thorough, detailed content at this other one. And they usually pay a hell of a lot more for that one than they do for mine.
Exactly. And Frank asked a good question. Are the 4 days different lessons? And the answer is yes. I mean, we spent a whole day with Anthony on a Saturday, and this worksheet, actually, you're showing more detail tonight than you did on that Saturday. This is only one small part of it. There's so many real world examples and real world material that you'll get at this 4-day boot camp. So it is 4 distinct days. You need to be there for all 4.
Yeah. So we start with, on Thursday morning, we start with locating your market and locating properties within the market. You need to understand, just like I went through here on some of the websites with city-data.com and spotcrime.com and cityprotect.com and bestplaces.net. What's happening in the market that you're interested in? Is now a good time to invest in that particular market? If it is a good time to invest in the market, then now you go to the next level, which is, how do you find properties in the market? So that's 3 to 4 hours on Thursday morning that we go through that information. The second half of the day on Thursday is quick analysis, and it's even more information on the quick analysis. It's about going through and analyzing all these different numbers and actually looking at a live deal during that session for another 3 to 4 hours. On Friday morning, we start with the offer section. That's 6 to 7 hours of content. Within the offer section and how to make offers, we talk about the process of what you need to do to be prepared to make offers, along with me peppering in information about negotiation strategies, financing strategies, due diligence information. The reason I do that is because as you're making an offer, you need to understand why you're asking the seller to provide you the information that you're asking them to provide you. And if you don't understand that, and they say, why do you need this information? You're going to say, I don't know, because Anthony said so. Right? That's not good. My goal is to make all of you sophisticated investors, not drones that fill in software and the software turns green because it means it's a good deal. You need to know why. And I guarantee you're going to know why by the end of the boot camp. Late in the afternoon on Friday, we then start the financing section. And we spend another 5 or 6 hours on financing your deals, from traditional methods and what lenders look for on the property from the sellers, to creative financing, doing things like getting the seller to do seller financing or zero interest seller financing, along with subject twos and wrap mortgages and several other things. Once we finish up with that on Saturday, we then go into due diligence. You take all the information that you got from the seller that you asked them for in the offer section, and now what do you do with it? We go through that on Saturday afternoon and Sunday morning, and I show you what to do with it and how to process that information to confirm that the information they gave you matches the information that you put in the quick analysis software. We get done with that. We do another 2 to 3 hours on negotiations. Now, there's going to be negotiations peppered in throughout a lot of these other sessions, but there's another 2 to 3 hours on other strategies that we haven't covered already through the final phase, which is 20 to 30 minutes on the actual closing process. What you need to do to be prepared at the closing table. And quite frankly, I cover a very important part of that on Friday morning when we do the offer section. So as long as you follow what I teach you in the offer section, by the time you get to the closing on Sunday afternoon, it should be quick, short, and painless. But there's a ton of information. And I guarantee your satisfaction at the end of 4 days. And it's not lunch on the first day or the end of the first day. You come all 4 days. And at the end of the 4 days, you tell me it wasn't worth your time or trouble, I will give you double your money back, because I know the quality content that I provide and how detailed and how in-depth we go into each one of those categories, that you're going to have a ton of great information.
So Frank asks if you need to raise all the down payment to get started. And the answer, I'll tell you, Frank, is no. but you need to come to the boot camp because Anthony is the master at putting money together for deals that could put you in for little to none of your own money. So I'll answer that. Ed asks, would you use the same analysis for any size apartment, or do you use different tools based on the number of units?
Yeah. So for me, well, I will answer Ed's question, then I want to go back to Frank's question here for a second. So first off, the quick analysis software is for commercial properties. So commercial properties, when it comes to apartments, is 5 units and up. So you can use this on a 4-plex, a triplex, and a duplex, but it's not designed for those because this program, this software is designed to show you the value of the property based on what's called the income approach to valuation. That's what's showing up on line 9. So line 9 down here, right? This is what's showing the income approach to valuation. A duplex, a triplex, and a 4-plex are valued totally off of comparables. So it may not have anything to do at all with the income that the property generates. So as long as it's 5 units and up, yes, you use this spreadsheet. You can use this for apartments, storage facilities, strip malls, office buildings, mobile home parks, residential assisted living, hotels, any type of commercial property, industrial warehouse space, any type of commercial property. You can use this to figure out the value of the property. Back to Frank's question, I'm not sure what he's saying when he says assuming bank is financing 70%, and he says he's not sure if that's true. Should you get $300,000 together to get started? For example, a $1 million 4-plex. Well, again, first off, you want to make sure it's a commercial property. Some banks will do 70%, some will still do 75%, some depending on the area and the debt service coverage ratio that we showed below. Down here, if you can't get the debt service coverage ratio above 1.25, you might only get 60% financing. There are some banks that will actually go up to 80% financing. But generally with 80% financing, a lot of the banks I've seen that do that will only allow you to do a 20-year amortization, not a 25 or a 30. And when you start shortening the amortization, and most of your income is going to pay the debt service, that's a problem. Up here, if we look at the debt service is running anywhere from about $5,100 a month to $4,300 a month, depending on the purchase price. That's principal and interest only, right? Taxes and insurance are up in your operating expense lines up above. So if you take this down as an example to a 20-year amortization, watch what happens to the debt service, right? It just went up $500. If we come over here to this one and make it 20 years, that's, by the way, that's per month. So this one just went up $400 per month, right? So you can't, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Frank. Yes, there is financing at 70%. You can get 70%. You can get, obviously the lower than you go, you can definitely get that. But also on top of that, what Jim is talking about is it doesn't have to be your money. So for you to come up with, or say that you have to come up with $300,000 to get the deal done, there's a couple of caveats to that. First off, if it's $1 million property and you're getting a 70% loan, you have to come up with more than $300,000. The $300,000 is just the down payment. Now you have closing costs, and some of your banks are also going to require you to have reserves set aside so that in case you have some interruptions in the first year with your cash flow, you're not going to be saying, oh, hey, I don't have enough income. We had extra vacancy. We had extra expenses. Can I skip a payment? They're going to say no. So you're going to have to come up with more than that. But to add on to what Jim was saying, it doesn't have to be your money. I've raised tens of millions of dollars for deals. And I think total, up until about a year ago, I probably had less than $100,000 or $200,000 in all the different deals that I owned. And I've owned over 2,000 units over the last 15 years because all the rest of the money was coming from investors. So these last couple of years, I've been putting more money in because that's a requirement of what's been going on in the market and with my investors. But yeah, it doesn't have to be your money. Even if you have to come up with $400,000 to buy that $1 million property, you can put in 25, you can get another 15 people to put in 25 grand to get up to that number that you need in order to get the deal done. It's called doing a syndication.
So Dean asked the question of the hour: is the analysis worksheet offered to us during the boot camp?
You actually get it as the home study course. This is part of the home study course documents. There's 8 audio files, there's 7 or 8 spreadsheets, there's 7 or 8 additional letters of intent and other addendums that you can add to your contracts. There's videos of the 4-day boot camp that you get. Let's see what else. There's videos that show you how to use this software. There's a 1-hour video or hour and 15-minute video that shows you how to use this piece of software and one other piece of software. So yeah, that's all included with the boot camp package.
Excellent question. Thank you. So Anthony, you're ready to get out of Colorado and back to Florida, I take it.
I will be there next week. Actually, I'll be in Houston this week doing a 1-day workshop, and I'll be warming up. We got rain and it was pretty chilly. It was only about 52 degrees today in Denver.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, looking forward to Florida. I love the heat and the humidity, so I'm all there.
So look, everybody visit DREIA.com. If you have any questions, you can email info@DREIA.com, and I'll be sure Anthony gets the questions if I can't answer them. You can also call the office and talk to Danny if you have questions about registering for the seminar, if you want to know about how to put the name in and things like that. But it's pretty self-evident in the order form. Okay, so you can do it right at DREIA.com. Remember, the closing time is Friday at noon Eastern.
Yep. Friday.
So Anthony, I want to thank you for taking time. I know it's kind of overtime for you. We appreciate it ever so much.
Yep.
And to everyone, I say visit DREIA.com and look at our upcoming events, as including this one. Okay. So thanks and good night.